All right, y'all. It is so good to be here with y'all, man. First and foremost, revolutionary power to all the black people around the world. And
I am
all the people of color and all the oppressed. And I am
a revolutionary.
a revolutionary. All right. So, if you haven't caught it by now, if you didn't catch it already, we are talking about Judas and the Black Messiah. All right. This is going to be our review, our breakdown, our thoughts, our emotions, how we felt, the history, and some context. I'm going to try and be here for just about 30 minutes for y'all. I'm going to let my lovely wife say the like, the share, and subscribe for you guys if you haven't already.
Yes, if you're catching us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. And let us know what you think. If you watch the movie, let us know how you like it. If you know the story before you watch the movie, and by story, I mean the history, because this is based on a real life. Let us know what you knew about the history and if the movie portrayed it. What was your emotions about the movie when you watch it? And if you haven't watched it, I know there are some folks who, and this is totally getting out, who try not to watch this type of movies because
That's a good place to start.
it's so heavy, right? Especially if you're a person of color who still to this day is experiencing know that maybe not yourself personally, but your community is experiencing still the same troubles and the same oppressions that we were experiencing at the time. And we still have folks dying too young in our community today. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. I mean, the names go on. And so the deaths are slightly the causes are slightly different, but the point is the plague is still here. We're still suffering from the same thing. So some folks avoid watching movies like this for their own health reasons, which I totally understand. It's not, you gotta take care of yourself and you gotta know yourself. So if that's you, let us know how or why you don't watch that. You might have a different reason than the reasons I just noted. But if you did make it to watching it, let us know your experience, and we'll get into it again. Subscribe, share, like, comment, and if you are on IG, follow. Let's do
it. All right. No, that was wonderful. That was great. Again, we just to piggyback off what she said, we know that sometimes movies like this can be heavy. You know what I'm saying? To put it in context, and we get that, especially if you're black anywhere in the world. You experience so much on a daily basis that sometimes you don't want to be reminded when you go to the movie theater about the same situation that we've been in. This was 1968, 1969. So that's the same age as some of our parents, some of our aunties, some of our uncles. You know what I'm saying?
My mom was born 10 years before that.
Right. You know what I mean? So this isn't new. And I think the issue that happens, and we get so frustrated as a people when we watch this movie or movies like this, is that it's still present. That's the issue. That's the hard part. But the reason that it's still present is exactly why we need to talk about it. So, Judas and the Black Messiah. I believe this was such a great and powerful title. You know what I mean? Because it catches you right from that moment. You know what I'm saying? You see Judas, the Black Messiah. You're like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is crazy, because we've all heard the story of Judas. We've, if you've been raised Christian, or you have any type of, I would just say, decently religious background, about, the word Messiah and things like that. But it was interesting what I believe, just starting from the opening credits, when J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI characterized Fred Hampton, Fred Hampton, the Honorable Chairman Fred Hampton, as the Black Messiah. Because when you hear about Messiah, when you think about a Messiah type figure, or the Messiah, you know what I'm saying, things like that. The one thing that he did, that Fred Hampton was doing as well, was he was bringing the community together. And the thing that always attracted me before this movie ever came out, and before I saw the original documentary, was that Fred Hampton wanted to unite all of the people. It wasn't just black people. It wasn't just Latino people. He wanted to unite the whites, the Asians, the Middle Easterns. I mean, again, anybody that has experienced oppression under the white European supremacist powers, him and the Black Panther Party wanted to unite them, and he understood that. He found the framework for that. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, he passed away at 21 years old. It's hard to believe that. I mean, we're only 6 years older than him. Mm-hmm. But I loved, because while we were getting prepared for this this review, we were listening to Daniel Kaluuya and LaKeith Stanfield. I hope I said his name right. Their interviews and their thoughts, and the director's thoughts, and his actual son, Fred Hampton's actual son, who obviously is named Fred Hampton Jr. Just how they portrayed the movie and the thought process and what they saw and what they believed. And I believe one thing that I took away from that was Daniel Kaluuya, the person who played Fred Hampton in the movie, he said he died at 21, but he wasn't 21. You know what I'm saying? Age is a concept. Because when you listen, if you go back and listen to his speeches, or you read up some material on Fred Hampton, he had what we would call now kind of an old soul. He was far beyond his time. He had wisdom beyond his years. And that's where I'll leave, my part right now. What you got?
It's interesting because for me, and this is more of a confession thing, I'll say on my side, is I hadn't heard about Fred Hampton until this point. Mm-hmm. And if you know my background, it's not justified, but at the same time, there's only so much history I can learn or catch up on these last maybe 7 years that I've started to better understand the importance of history and so forth, and learning the importance of specifically Black history. So, and I've learned a lot of it through him, because this guy is a historian, born and raised. He will die a historian. I think I'll just put, if he dies before me, I'll just put historian and father. And so I appreciate it, and I will listen. As we were listening to the interviews, Daniel was saying, for him, he was lucky enough that he didn't have any preconceived perceptions about Fred Hampton before he got into the movie. Mm-hmm. And for me, I have the same thing. I hadn't heard about Fred Hampton before this movie. Mm-hmm. And so I have that same luxury of not going in with certain expectations of this man who is, for all intents and purposes, yes, is a Black Messiah, or any expectations of what happened to him, what he did. You know what I mean? I didn't have any tainted minds. That being said, it did make sense of the name and everything, because it's well said. It's well said, and for all intents and purposes, not just the way he lived, his life goals and mission, the way he put them in action, but also the way he died, unfortunately, right? He may not have died on the cross, but
he did die. He died in his bed.
Right, exactly. And with death wish coming from so many different directions. And again, the final blow being from somebody in your own circle, somebody, one of your disciples, in a sense. You know what I mean?
And that's a good thing to point to get upon. I think we've seen this before in a number of Black leaders, even before Fred Hampton, and especially after. Well, there haven't been too many after, but you get what I'm saying. Where they will build up something amazing, something outstanding, but the society at large, American Europeans, white people, non-melons, whatever you want to call them, will feel as though this is the greatest terror to domestic homeland security. You'll hear that all the time. This is the greatest terror to homeland security. And I didn't understand what that meant.
The greatest threat.
The greatest threat to homeland security.
National security.
National security, until I watched this movie. Because if that was truly the case, then the KKK wouldn't exist. The Proud Boys wouldn't exist. And all of these other right-wing extremist groups would not exist. Because they are terror a threat to national security.
Yeah, if you ask me, the what is it called? The NOA, the Gun Society, and all that stuff. Anyways, but
No,
yeah.
I mean, again, these groups harbor the same feelings and emotions that killed Fred Hampton. You know what I'm saying? And I think the interesting thing, just to pick up on LaKeith's character, William O'Neill, was how he was manipulated. You know what I'm saying? How easily he was manipulated. And whereas now we're watching it, and I mean, this is, 50 years later, we're watching essentially a documentary and film. And we, are very, very pro our people, pro black, pro revolutionary, pro all those advancement, empowerment, you know what I'm saying, of our people. But back then, that wasn't the case to the same extent that it is now. And I think that, watching it through the lens that we live in now, especially what happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, is so surprising to me that you couldn't understand, or there weren't black people on board back then that couldn't see that Fred Hampton was trying to progress us forward, that he was trying to move us in a better direction, that he was trying to say, look, we're not saying death to all people. We're not saying we're a racist party. We're not saying any of those things. And he spoke about that, repeatedly in his speeches. He's saying that we simply want a communist type of community where the people make the decisions, where the people have the power. Socialist community where the people come in and say, this is what we want. This is how we want to govern it. And that's what we do. You know what I'm saying? But again, because the powers that be see any unity, any idea, any concept, any progression of an oppressed people as negative, you do what you do. You infiltrate it. You destroy it. You tear it down. You belittle it. You send wires and taps and messages back and forth, and you harass people in the neighborhood, and you instigate. I think that was one of the best words I ever heard, being a ghetto baby growing up. You are a instigator. You know what I'm saying?
Instigator.
You are. You know what I'm saying? And through these instigations, you see the division of our people. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what truly hurt me about the character that my man's, I'm gonna just call him my man's from Atlanta, was playing. I don't want to keep messing up on his name, and it's like, it's not that it's hard for me to pronounce. So, did you have any thoughts on our homie from Atlanta's character?
I do. I'm glad you put on the interview that we were watching before this, where somebody had asked him, how are you feeling after portraying this character, and if you know him, the character he portrayed is totally opposite of what he believes in as a person. But so it's essentially, it's easier to understand, and I'm not saying Daniel's job was easier than
I know. His name was just...
I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is, for Daniel being a black man who is pro-black and is for the, essentially, he may not be Fred Hampton, but he is for the same values. It's easier to portray that on screen than going on screen and portraying the total opposite. Now, that being said, I did like the part towards the end where they ask him, do you regret it? Right? Or what would you say to people today about what you did? And he said, it's something like, I did what I had to do for what I was given, or something like that. And that brought me to what you often say and what we often hear is basic needs, right? Because for him, yes, he was the Judas. He was the villain, for all intents and purposes. But again, if he was the villain because he wasn't able to see that his advancement alone, of his ability to not be one man in jail, is essentially pounding down on millions, hundreds of thousands of black men in jail today, And before, from then up until today, how many black men and women have we had in jail, right? And he made this deal to just so he doesn't go to jail, right? And I get it. Nobody wants to be in jail. Nobody wants to be in jail, but it's so hard. Maybe if he had the basic needs, maybe he would think about a greater purpose. Because like he said, he was just a man who did what he felt he had to do. In opposition to a man who, again, same thing, same basic thing. I did what I felt I had to do with what I was given. That's the result we have for him, in comparison to Fred Hampton. He too did what he thought he had to do with what he was given, and that ended up being a very positive outcome, right? Because of the different circumstances that he was given. And he was saying that he come from an elite family. Again, that already has a different perspective, and like you already have your basic needs met, so it's a little easier to not fall victim for the temptations of the white man, essentially, for the temptation of the oppressor.
Right on. Right on. Right on.
But no, it's definitely, you know what I mean?
Understand.
And so by the time you watch him, and by the time because he though he was an infiltrator, he was doing, for all intents and purposes, on the surface, what a Black Panther would do. Right? What a comrade would do, as they would call it. He was helping them with things. He was they trust him to the point where he had fire weapons. Like, he was just another man. There was a time there where they had a bed of it down, and he was able to, weasel that real quick. So by the time he then better understood the need for the Black Panther, and the need to actually by the time he understood that he's not just a man who needs to just fight for himself, but he's a black man who unfortunately had the weight of all of melanated men on his shoulder, just like any black man and woman. That by that time it was too late, because he had put himself in a corner wherein, if he had come out to the Black Panther folks, definitely, he's done with. Because how can you trust at that point, right?
Especially in a situation, in an organization like
exactly.
That, you know what I mean?
And then it's not like he can back out of his deal with the Fed, That's so either way he was a dead man, either way he was a dead man. And so for him, he figured, well, if I'm going to be a dead man, I might as well be a dead man with food on my table. I might as well be a dead man with a business,
And I just want to talk about it, because obviously there were so many. There were like three main characters. There was actually Fred, Bill, and I believe even Deborah Harrison, Fred's wife, was a character that often, again, she's a great actress. If you've seen her in Power on Netflix, she's in that with Jamie Foxx.
Oh, is she?
Yeah,
I didn't see that.
That's why I knew her face, and I was like, that's the old girl from her. And she plays a little kid so well. It's like, how some of those, I'm not trying to get off topic, but how some of those actors just, They're don't so look, you know what I'm saying, 30-something, 40-something, and they can play these roles that are like kids, and they're like 12 and 20 and things, you know what I'm saying? It's amazing. But I just want to finish with his character. We'll move to Daniel, and then we'll talk about Deborah, and then we'll, kind of wrap it up with our closing thoughts. So I remember his character. And
he's being Bill's
Bill.
We're having a hard time with the character's name.
I know his first name is LaKeith. That's the only thing I know. I know his first name is LaKeith, but I cannot pronounce his last name to
so
save
we just
my
go
life.
with LaKeith, Mr. LaKeith. How about
And
that?
I'm sure he would probably appreciate it. But I feel one of the most powerful things that I think we finally saw in this character, essentially a villain in movies that we know and love, like The Color Purple. We know it was Donald Glover, and in Friday, even though it wasn't as heavy, it was Debo. You know what I'm saying? Like, we knew these are the characters we're not supposed to like, but I appreciated what he talked about, like when he was filming, he really afterwards and during he had to take therapy. You know what I'm saying? Like he was so committed to this role that he had to understand that this isn't, as you said, this isn't who I am. I would never do this, but this is what this character did. And trying to find those motivations to why he did that was such an amazing understanding. And I mean, he's an amazing actor. Like his depth, and like I love what he said about, you know, I try and act things that I feel will give me a challenge.
Ooh, that gave him a challenge.
You know what I'm saying? Because again, we saw him in Atlanta and we loved him in Atlanta. We saw him in Sorry to Bother You and we loved him in Sorry to Bother You. You know what I'm saying? Like anytime we see him, he has almost that, I would say, and I'm not trying to compare the two, but that next level of Childish Gambino type, that weird kind of I can work, you know what I'm saying, type of swag. Like that's just my thing.
He's very fluid in his acting.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Like that's his style. So
you do your thing, LaKeith.
Yeah, LaKeith, if you ever see this man, like we appreciate you.
Mr. Stanfield.
LaKeith Stanfield. There you go. Thank you so much. I'm gonna have to say that a couple times.
LaKeith Stanfield. It's a beautiful name.
It's like trying to say Worcestershire sauce. You know what I'm saying? That's like one of the hardest things.
I'd rather say that than Bob. So.
Right, Bob.
He gives a challenge.
Right. So that was great. So moving on to obviously one of the main stars, if not the main star of the movie, Daniel Kaluuya's portrayal of Fred Hampton. One thing that I always loved about Fred Hampton, because obviously I studied our black leaders and things like that, as she told you, I will die a historian. Okay, all right, first and foremost. But his voice, his delivery was something that you could never forget. You know what I'm saying? Him, Dr. King, Malcolm, all these people who were able to, who's during their time, we had the production of audio and things like that and able to record. His voice was something that almost made you gravitate towards him more. You know what I'm saying? That you know, just the Black Panther Party. You know what I'm saying? And I believe in the revolution of the people. You know what I'm saying? And things like that. And I personally feel a little bit more of a connection to him because I'm from Detroit, you know, and Fred Hampton was from Chicago. You know, Detroit and Chicago driving are only 4 hours away. It's a 30-minute flight. It's like a 2-hour train ride.
Neighbors,
you know what I'm saying?
Cousins, essentially.
Right, we're essentially neighbors. And to think about what he accomplished, and it always surprises me, you know, when somebody dies young, especially someone not that any death isn't insignificant, but one that becomes public and known for what they've done. It always surprises me how much they have accomplished in their short amount of time. You know what I'm saying? Their short amount of time. And his idea is what got him killed. You know what I'm saying? It was the idea.
The dare to, you know. He dared to dream and actually not just talk about it.
Right.
But actually went ahead and risk his life, because all the time when he was walking in those places, talking to
talk to the white Proud Boys.
Talking to them, and he made it a point not to go in there with the gun. I was like, you have big balls. Big balls, brother. Comrade.
It was,
you know?
I believe what this movie did, what the original documentary, Eyes on the Prize, couldn't do, was they showed him outside of the context of giving speeches. Sometimes we only know our heroes in the context of them being heroic. We never see them without the cape or without the tights or superpowers or whatever. And this movie allowed us, from the opening credits, to see him, because at the time, I didn't know he cussed in his speeches. You know what I'm saying? I was like, this my homie right here, Chairman Fred. You know what I'm saying? And but you know how some people, they can convey it in a way where it doesn't come off as crude or insensitive. He conveyed it in such a way to where it felt like, ooh, yeah. It
just adds to the passion behind.
You know what I'm saying? It added to, yeah, he is a motherfucker. That's right. He is. That is true. That is true.
That's a motherfucker right there.
But he, again, getting back to the point, he died for his idea. And I think that, to me, his commitment to what he believed in is what was so tangible to me, and what is so tangible I still feel to this day as a black man, as a black woman, as somebody who held himself in that regard. You know what I'm saying? Somebody who says, look, I'm willing to lay it on the line for people who I may never meet. And that's what I think about when I think about a Fred Hampton, a Malcolm X, a Harriet Tubman, a Nat Turner, all of these lists, and I can go on and on and on, of people who have said, I may not be here for the benefits that come after what I've done, but I'm willing to say and have value and give my life purpose by doing it. You know what I'm saying? I think to me, that was the most gravitational thing. And of course, Daniel Kaluuya, just being able to I'm always impressed by British actors. You know what I'm saying? Who can get this American dialect down, because if you hear him in speeches, he goes, you know, like, "I was up trouble." You know what I'm saying?
I know. It's such a sweet to hear them and be like, "Hold on, I am." I'm like, "Aren't you gonna come here and tell me I am?" Everybody, he's like, "I am." I'm like, that's a total different accent.
I believe in a revolutionary power.
Right.
And I mean, and not to come for Daniel or our British brothers and sisters, but it doesn't have that same context. Could you imagine him giving that speech like, "I am a revolutionary"? He'd be like, "No, you're not."
I mean, it's just a totally different context.
You know what I'm saying?
You know what I mean?
And exactly. And if Fred Hampton had been in Britain, he would have probably said it like, "I am a revolutionary." You know what I'm saying?
Knowing Fred, he probably get the same work done across
the pond,
as he was doing, because he was reaching out across the ocean. You know, not just here in America. He was talking about different movements in the continent of Africa and so forth. I did appreciate it. It's small, but it's so big at the same time that he wasn't just a guy who gives speeches and is know his words and things like that. But he also know and understand the importance of the little things, such as serving breakfast to people, making sure
medicine.
Yes, housing, healing. So he understand, like we were saying, he understand that basic needs are as important, if not more important, than building and fighting for the community, for the future and so forth. Because if you don't have today, how can you plan for tomorrow?
Right.
You know,
in my opinion,
and I really appreciated that they showed that in the movie.
Right. The only thing I was going to add was, in my opinion, the African American never left him. That sense of community. You can go anywhere in the continent, and I haven't been yet, but we planning. I'm so excited.
He is very
excited. I promise, and that's a whole nother story for American Africans like myself, African Americans. But I think, you know, that sense of Africa never left him because his people were not progressing. As we talked about, and it's spoken briefly in one of his speeches and things like that. He came from a better, well-off kind of family. He didn't have to go into the slums of the South Side or the West Side of Chicago, but he thought within himself, the people, my people, and other people are suffering from oppression. It is not good, or it's not right for me to have and they don't have. You know what I mean? So that was it. And again, I think so often in this movement, it's been said before, in movements like this and people like this, if it's not a woman, you know, the women behind the men, or the women beside the men, or the women in front of the men never get the justice and credit that they're due. I know she's changed her name recently. She's not Deborah Harris. Well, it wasn't recently, but you know, she's not Deborah Harris anymore. But Deborah Harris was the I don't even know if they ever got married. They were so young, but you know, she was the girlfriend of Fred Hampton. You know what I'm saying? And she was eventually, actually 25 days later, she gave birth to their only son. You know what I mean? Fred Hampton Jr., obviously. And what I loved about the portrayal of her character, particularly, was I think she allowed us to see the people who go along for the struggle, who may not be the face, but she brought that humanity and said, look, you out here, and she even said it in the poem, and it was so powerful. You know, you can go out here and talk about dying for the people. You can go out here and say, you know, I am a revolutionary and I would die a revolutionary.
My body's for the people.
Right, my body's for the people. But she was like, you're not carrying a body inside you. You know what I'm saying? And to all the mothers who may be watching, all the mothers to be.
No, I felt her on that one.
Yeah,
I did. Because I know, like, back, this is, if you know Jason before this, he had his Facebook thing, Facebook Live called Soulful. I almost said Soulful Village, Soulful University. So our, if you're catching this on YouTube, her name is a combination of that and me being the village girl. So you know, we combine that together. But the point I'm trying to make is when we started dating, and we, you know, I'm much closer to him now. I'm whole ass have his ring on my finger, and this whole life, you know, long living till death do us apart thing that we're doing. We did that thing. But even then, it was just thinking, you know, as I was thinking about him more seriously and so forth, it was just thinking about him in that eye, with all the, I know when you're in that light, you do have some positive eyes on you because people do understand the meaning of what you're doing, but you also have, I feel like, a lot more negative eyes on you than positive, because again, if Fred Hampton maybe would still be alive today if he wasn't a revolutionary. Maybe you know what I mean, he will be able to see his son if he wasn't maybe have 5 more kids, as he that they joked about in the movie, you know what I mean. So
yeah, that was tough.
Once you make that decision as a person to be like, I'm gonna do this, and this has become my life mission, and so forth, till I die. If I die for it, in fact, I am willing and ready to die for it. That's all good. And right, but the people who are invested in you, who care for you, whose life mingled with yours, and as in the case for Deborah, who's holding your, you know, somebody who's a little you, it's like, on one hand, it's such a battle, because on one hand, you don't want to take away from the gift that they are to the community. But on the other hand, you feel almost selfish wanting them to just be yours and be home for their children. You know what I mean? And not die, because essentially you can see it. It's like
you read it. You knew,
right.
I mean, you knew what was coming.
Right. You know if you like, you know, it's any smart man or woman, you know the fight. You know this will end up in his death. It's like, come on. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, but if you have anything else to say on her,
no, I'll say this. I think back, I won't even say back in my day, because I mean, age is a concept, so I will say back in my day. Back in my day, I was so, as Fred was, you know, so committed, and still am, but that commitment I saw may eventually lead to more pain than power. You know what I'm saying? It would. But I think the issue was, a lot of times with our black leaders, we're so far ahead of the movement, and I say the movement in terms of where the people are and ready to commit with you, that the movement falls apart. One of the things we talk about a lot of times is, why is it when a Fred Hampton dies, a Malcolm X dies, or Dr. King dies, or Rosa Parks, or Maya Angelou, or Harriet Tubman, or any of these great men and women, why is it that the community falls back apart? You know what I'm saying? Why do we have these brief extents of you know, black pride, black unity, we you know, we down, we everything like that, and then some, but then we lose it the moment the leader falls. I mean, again, the leader may have fallen, but as Fred Hampton, you know what I'm saying, as Fred Hampton said, as long as there's one black person in the world, there will always be a Black Panther Party. Okay, all right. I think what, as we've talked about before privately, and we'll just briefly get into it here, we don't necessarily always have a contingency plan. I think that's the best way to put it. And our oppressors always have a contingency plan. Because the moment they took out Fred Hampton, they usually came in and said, well, we're going to distract you with drugs. Or we're going to distract you with music. Or we're going to distract you with X, Y, and Z to make you forget all about them. You know what I'm saying? Or we're going to distract you with the illusion of inclusion. You know what I'm saying? To make you believe that you're a part of this American society.
All right, brother.
You know what I'm saying? And this,
I dig it. Right on, brother.
to the great ancestor Fred. You know what I'm saying? They distract us. And I think what we have to do is start, I think this is the manifest of what I would give, is start from within, because that's what I did. You know what I'm saying? I took a hiatus, not necessarily because I wanted to, but because it would needed to happen. And out of that hiatus, I was able to build a better foundation. And I was able to build a better person. And I was able to become a better person who was able to give more than I was ever given before to our people, to the commitment, to what I believed in. And so what I would say for those who, you know, who are connected to revolutionaries, you can't help who you fall in love with. You know what I'm saying? As I'm sure this one will tell you. and I do get it, and the great ones usually do. It's hard for those who are with you because you can almost see what will happen if you reach a certain level. You know what I'm saying? If you reach a certain level, because as we talked about earlier, white free speech exists, but anybody else's free speech, you're literally playing with death. It's not even fire. You know what I'm saying? Fire sometimes you can heal from, but death you can't. You know, and I think that's a difficult thing. So what I would say is start with you. Start with building skills. Start to master things. Start to improve yourself to the point to where those basic necessities that we talked about are not a factor for you. And then, as I did and as I continue to do, start to educate yourself on your people, because now you have to heal and say, okay, why don't I necessarily like myself sometimes? What are the things that I don't necessarily find positive about myself? Why do I have a negative connotation about Africa? Is it truly just I don't mess with it, or is it something deeper, like propaganda that's been given to me, that's been told to me, that's been shared with me to make me feel as though they have no worth, I have no worth? Because you can't hate the roots and then love the tree.
Yeah.
It's impossible. You can't do it. So once you've done that and you have a solid foundation of your people and your history, not just here in America, but across the diaspora, then you say, okay, what can I do to truly advance my people? You don't, again, not all of us are Fred, Chairman Fred. Not all of us are Malcolm. Not all of us are Rosa. Not all, and we have, and I'll put it this way, we have different revolutionaries for different days. You know what I'm saying? This is a different day than it was in 1969, 68, the 60s. It was a different day. But that does not mean that things have changed or improved. We can go outside and see that. But what it does mean is that in your own way, in your own path, in your own desire, you can make that change. You can be that difference. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the voice. A community, and I think that is the point that all of our leaders they've all been trying to say for the past 400 or 500 years, from the continent to the Caribbean to here, is that it's the unity that will heal our people. And the unity, and once we stop having a fear of the oppressor, when we stop having a fear and we unite, then we will be, as Marcus Garvey once said, a people that are so brilliant, you will wonder, you will be amazed at what we can do and what we will do.
All right, brother. All right. Right on.
Right on.
Right on.
Right on.
But I will say it to me seems almost like, and this essentially, I think that was essentially your closing. I will say it seems almost like to ask that the movement doesn't die with the leader dying is adding more on the leader's plate, and unfortunately it's what we need to do, I feel like, because I know besides all of that you said, is that those who who end up, because sometimes you don't necessarily wake up and decide to be a leader, you just end up there due to what you know, circumstances, and you take on the honor and the burden, you know, which is majority burden, is to add another thing in the plate, where in all of that you're doing, you make sure that you have others around you who can, if you drop dead today, which unfortunately you know it's likely to happen earlier than later, other folks are ready to jump into that light with the same confidence. They will likely do it totally differently because they're not you, nor should they try to be you. But they're ready to jump into that light and continue doing the work in their own way, right? That way, we don't end up with just like, well, he's in jail, everything is done, or he's dead, everything is done. You know what I mean? Because unfortunately, once somebody is already in that light, it's likely that they're gonna end up, it's being that way throughout history, right? To some degree, it's still that way, and it's gonna take us a lot to get to a point where somebody is as outspoken about it and as much of a leader as folks like Fred Hampton and Malcolm and King was, and really have a full life past their 30s or their 40s, or their 50s. You know what I mean?
I'll say two things in closing. I think the power of what a black messiah, and I'm not just talking about Fred Hampton, could be, is what started the rapid decline of black leaders. The power of what they could be. The power of what could happen if Dr. King had stayed alive.
Like
the power of what could happen if Malcolm X had stayed alive. The power of what could happen if Fred Hampton had lived. He would still be alive today.
He was 21.
He was only 21 years
wild.
old. He would still, he would still be alive today. I often think about that, and that fear has always been in white society. That fear of what will happen if black people ever unite, and what will happen if they ever come and get justice for the sins and the oppressions that we have placed on these people. And thus that fear has always placed them in a position to say, we are going to do everything to maintain homeland security. You know what I'm saying? Homeland security. And the last thing that I'll say for the revolutionaries out there, I know your heart. You know what I'm saying? I know what it's like to be there and still there. You know what I'm saying? Things of that nature. Watch who's around you. I think if there's one other takeaway from this movie, watch
keep your eyes wide open.
Who is around you. As Drake said, we don't need no new friends.
No.
we don't, and I'm not, it's joking, but truly, you can look at, if you want to take another example, you can look at what happened to Kevin Hart. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't necessarily a new friend, but he didn't look at who's around him. You know what I'm saying? And thus he got into the situation that he did. So here's what I say, man, woman, child, whoever, because like you said, you don't know when it's gonna hit you. Watch who's around you. Background check. Like what LaKeith said, and I loved in his interview, was he was like, the FBI at that time had some of the most advanced technology to look and investigate into their own American citizens. You know what I'm saying? They had wiretaps in the walls. They would call your family. They would have people ride by your house listening to and they put all that effort. I think that is a horrible thing, but I think that's another thing to think about. How much effort they put into destroying any black messiah.
It wasn't like, let's do. It was really structured and targeted, and they work really hard for it, and they use all that they can, whether that's physical, emotional, psychological, to make sure that those who are on the ground, because remember in the movie, when they were sending him back to jail, and the FBI guy was like, well, we won. He's going back to jail. And the boss was like, well, what was he saying?
J. Edgar
He
Hoover,
said jail.
No, I'll try and paraphrase it the best
insinuated that it's better that he's dead. Essentially,
right? That was the essential.
That people go to jail. Oh, this person going to jail and came back and was a better force or something.
I remember it now because I'm the one with the memory, y'all. I got a good one. She does too, but he essentially said, Mitchell, who was the FBI consultant or main man to William O'Neill, he said, he told J. Edgar Hoover, he was like, look, Fred Hampton's about to go back to jail. He'll be great. And Hoover wasn't having it. You know what I'm saying? He had seen this happen before with King and Malcolm X. And he said, jail is only temporary. Jail makes them martyrs. Jail brings them out and gets them known and notoriety. He's like, you need to neutralize, as you said, neutralize this threat. Because if you do, then
And then he put the fear in him. Like, what would you
Right.
say?
Go ahead.
This was so powerful because he was like,
and this fear still exists today.
It still exists. Yeah. This guy had just had like a eight month old baby girl, and the boss was like, what would you say if your girl comes home with a Negro? Right. And he was like, she's only 8 months. Yeah, but what will happen? And then he said, no, my daughter wouldn't do that. But what if she does? So just that fear of what could happen. The mere thought of his daughter coming home with the Negro was enough to fire in him to just. Because he was a little bit on the fence if he needed to kill Fred Hampton or whatever. Because he was like, well, he's in jail, the job is done. But that fear, essentially, it got the job done in him.
And I think that's even more powerful, is the fear that they put into each other. You know what I'm saying? The fear that they put on their own people. The propaganda that they spin when they want a Messiah taken out. You know what I'm saying? That fear. But here's what I flip it. And I always say this, and we are trying our best to end this, y'all. I think unless we have anything else, this really be the last point. We've seen this time and time again. You can watch Fox News any day of the week, and then watch Trevor, where Trevor Noah in the Daily Show, to be exact, and others like him. But they will say one thing, and then flip it. As if they were the victims when somebody comes and tells...
use the facts.
Exactly, and uses the facts and says, that's not right. They did the exact same thing with Fred Hampton and Bill O'Neal. Because he told him in the beginning, the Black Panther Party is no different than the Ku Klux Klan. And when you place that in your mind, think about the era, just briefly. Bill O'Neal was probably born, let's say he was 20 at the time. So he was born in the 40s. His parents had grown up through Jim Crow. Nothing but 2 generations removed from slavery. And even though, as we know, he may have been Chicago, he probably migrated from somewhere else. And so that fear that has been placed of the white man, the white woman being the boss or the person who's in power, in charge, had been in him for 4 generations up to him being the 4th. And now you gonna tell me this party with these amount of black people are the same as them? Oh, I gotta help. I gotta bring it. And I think that's the deeper level. Yes, he did have jail time facing. Yes, he did not know anything about the movement and things like that. But I think it was that internal fear of, well, I'm helping. You know what I'm saying? I'm helping.
Combine that with the need to fetch for yourself, and it's
right.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It's a recipe for that, and like you said, and then like you said, because it's such a powerful movie, y'all. We're not trying to.
It is. I was sleepy, but I was sleepy before we got there. Wide awake when we're done. So
right. We're not trying to prolong this or keep you or anything like that. But I think what's so interesting, and this is the one thing I always say about black leaders, is that Bill understood how far they were willing to go to kill Fred Hampton. And Fred Hampton, in my opinion, was not willing to do the same because he believed, even though he did not speak nonviolence, he believed in the power of the people so much that they didn't have to get to violence.
I mean, he united people who are black, white, Latino, Latinx, because he said even his speech, power to give black power to black folks, give white power to white folks. Like
yellow power to yellow people. You know what I'm saying? And that was the discussion of the day. Not trying to offend our Asian brothers and sisters who may watch this, but during that time, that was just the common terminology of the day. You know what I'm saying? Negro, things like that. And so I always question that, you know what I'm saying? Especially when they have the chance to like really make that dent or that impression or speak the language of the oppressor. I think so often we don't take that chance because in our heart of hearts, we still are so African in the sense of we value the life and the humanity of somebody over their death, even our oppressor. And that has always baffled me to some extent. But then
that's also, it's a balance, and we're trying to end this. We are really trying. It's like so, black.
It's such a good movie, man.
But no, it's what I said, the line between this and that is very fine. The line between learning and understanding your oppressor so that you can no longer be oppressed and becoming one of them is very thin.
So thin.
It's so thin. It's so thin. That's all I'm gonna say. It's so thin that you gotta really know. You gotta really know the boundaries for yourself.
Here's my only thing, y'all. After all we've seen, if that was the case, and we finally did come to, I would say, a color war, not even a race war, because we're all one race. If, and I don't want to say if, but I'll say if for context. If our people won, right? Would we really do exactly what they did to us if we had the power? I personally believe we wouldn't. I don't believe we would because we've seen what that happens. Would we take our justice in revenge? Of course, no doubt, and it's deserving. But I believe something new would come from that, something better. A society that is actually equal, a society that's actually fair, a society that says, no, we're not going to prejudge you because of the color of your skin or something you already cannot change within yourself. That's it.
We are actually ending this. Again, thank you for joining us.
Please, I'll say it this time. Thank you guys so much for being here and taking time out of your Sunday. We know we usually do this on Saturday. But I have recently been making some moves in my life. I'm on my journey to go back to school, so that took up a good majority of my yesterday and the opportunity.
Last 5 days.
Yeah, the last 5 days.
Deserved?
That opportunity just took so much of my time because I'm truly invested in it, and so we apologize for not being here for Saturday, but we do these. Excuse me. Movie reviews every time that we watch a movie that feels it's deserving. We appreciate again you guys being here on a Sunday. Please like, share, follow us on YouTube, on Instagram. You can find us there. I'm sorry, yeah. 1 second. You can find. I'm not trying. It's just there's so much there. You can find us on there. If you want to, that's what I wanted to say. I'm sorry, guys. Share this content with somebody who you believe will enjoy it, or who needs to hear it, or who needs to hear two black perspectives. You know what I'm saying? And things of that nature. So, moving on to our own individual things. If you haven't heard, and we just gonna promote each other and let this thing go, please go on Apple podcast and things of that nature and download Healthcare Boulevard, this wonderful woman.
I just put it on it's on majority of podcast stuff. The only way it won't be for the next few weeks or month is Google Podcast, but it's on almost everything else. Some of them are still loading, but you definitely find it on Apple, Spotify, and all those things. I'm so excited.
She's so excited, and she's done 2 interviews so far in the intro, and it's already making moves and making waves and just healing our people through the professional side and the understanding of how to logically make a path. On my personal end, as you guys know, I'm preparing for my episode talking about the history of the police. We're going to do a whole series on the police in America, and we're going to talk about their beginning, because I think you have to understand the roots before you can get to the rotten.
Did I tell you history, man?
the rotten core of the tree. You know what I'm saying? I also, with the help of this wonderful woman, will be starting my podcast, and essentially what I'm going to be producing is questions for the culture. The first episode is on Twitter, on my Twitter right now, Growth Through Winning.
Winning Through Growth?
No,
you switch it?
It's still Winning Through Growth, but you'll find it Growth Through Winning, and that's part of the reason I want to put it on there as well. Okay. But the first question that I gave, and then maybe you guys can comment on it well, is do you feel that other minorities who aren't black like us should be able to say the N-word? I know sometimes our Latinx, Latina brothers and sisters can say it, especially if they've grown up in a black community or Afro-Latino.
And what's your reasoning? Because usually people just say yes or no just to say it. What's your real reasoning? Right.
You know what I'm saying? And things of that nature. I know being out here in California, there's a very large Asian diaspora. and you know, our Asian brothers and sisters, especially the young kids, because everybody's always into Black culture. It doesn't matter how old you are. But we know hip hop is forever. You know what I mean? So, you know, kids say it back and forth, up and down all the time. You know what I mean? So it's just a question that I posed, and you guys can give me your genuine feedback. And of course, I love to interact and engage with you guys. But other than that, that's it, y'all. We appreciate y'all being here. Thank you for the love. We saw the hearts and everything. We're going to hit this one, and then we're going to say what we do on the normal end. So
you'll handle that.
we're going to do that. You ready?
Yep.
You ready?